Welcome to Frequency. I'm Jenny Field.
And I'm Chuck Gose. Frequency is your go-to for real talk about comms, culture, and employee experience beyond the buzzwords and straight to what matters. Jenny, as we prepared for this final episode of 2025, I was reflecting back on like the old school David Letterman's top 10 list that he would do as we're going to go through these 10 themes that sort of caught up to us this past year of doing the episode. But as we've seen across all these different platforms, I want to give a shout out. I am not a Spotify paying customer. So years ago when they would put out their Spotify Wrapped, I would always feel very left out because I am a loyal by default Apple Music user. So I never really got that advantage, and I would see everybody doing their Spotify Wrapped. Then I would hear stories of people like modifying their Spotify Wrapped so they didn't want to admit, or they wanted to look cooler than they really were, to put some obscure bands in there. But anyway, I love that this Wrapped thing has become almost like this feature. It's a good way to reflect and catch up to the impact. So this is episode 38 of Frequency. We can't read into the future, so we don't know exactly how long this episode is going to be. But I did go back and thanks to our AI friends and calculate how many minutes, hours and minutes did we produce for Frequency. And the number, I don't know that I was surprised by the number. Maybe I guess I'm impressed by the number, Jenny. But it was 25 hours and 41 minutes of us. Because the other number I want to feature in here was how many guests did we have? 0. So that is more than a day of just listening to Jenny and I. So thank you to everyone who has been on this journey with us. You've given up a day plus of your life to listen to Frequency this year.
Yeah, I love that. 25 hours and 41 minutes of us. What joy we've had in this. And how many is it going to be next year? Because we only started in March, I think, this year. So it's going to be even more, next year. On the rap stuff, just like you, I always used to be quite envious of the Spotify people because I don't get that either. But this year I've had more Wrapped things than ever before. I had Apple Music Wrapped. I had Strava Wrapped. I had Whoop Wrapped, which is my fitness watch. LinkedIn have obviously done it as well. So that's been good fun. I just feel like I've been inundated now with Wrapped, which is nice.
It is nice, and I was a bit relieved when you sent me your LinkedIn Wrapped, and it said that like I was your strongest connection. I forget what the word was, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be awkward. But thankfully, like you were mine. Yes. Now it did get a little awkward when my wife Kristen shared that I was hers. So Fair. Anyway.
I know. I was pleased because I was like, if I'm the one keeping up with him the most and he's not keeping up with me the most, then we're going to be having words about this. So I was very relieved on your behalf, really, that it was fine.
It was also interesting to see that Riverside, where we record this, also did their Wrapped. Theirs I thought was very clever because they basically created one of it's just us laughing, which I shared on LinkedIn, and also our word that we said the most, which is kind of comical to go back and listen to because it's just AI, back and forth. But that just shows like how important that is to what we're all doing. Yeah,
I know. It made me think of the E-I-E-I-O song when I was listening to it.
Well, I was thinking of like the Nemo, the mine. Like,
Oh, so funny. Right, as you said at the start of this, we're going to have a look at the 10 key themes in this last episode of the year. And they're the 10 key themes about what we've covered and talked about over the course of those 25 hours and 41 minutes. And then we're going to have a little look at some predictions as well for next year. So I'm going to go through the 10. And as I go through them, I know you're going to have something to say. So the first one, that's one of the themes, is the middle management crisis. So what we found over the year was that organisations were really thinning out that middle management layer. So managers now overseeing around 15 to 20 direct reports. That's up from 10 to 15 2 years ago. And only 27% of managers globally feel engaged at work, which is creating this cascade effect of a lack of a team engagement and organizational direction. So this is something I feel like we've talked about quite a lot this year, not as much as return to office, which I'm sure is going to be on here. But I don't think that's a surprise that that's kind of in the 10 key themes of 2025.
I'll be quick in my responses to each of these so that we can get through them somewhat quickly. But I think this is that maybe not so subtle, but problematic layer to so many challenges that are faced across organizations at all levels and all industries, is this problem that's, I think, been a problem for a while that I think we're also calling out as this issue. We'll just have to see if anybody cares to fix it.
Yeah, 100%. So the second one is our favorite topic, hybrid work reality versus the mandates. So the data shows that 85% of hybrid roles require at least 2 days in office, and companies now pushing for 4 days. 19% of employees want full-time office work, while 70% are preferring remote or hybrid options. So we've got this disconnect between employee preference and employer mandates, which is continuing to have an impact on turnover among some top performers.
Yeah, I think this is where we're seeing that the mandates are getting a lot more attention than the reality of what's happening at a lot of companies, where it seems like the data is showing that this hybrid is the one that's working out the most, and the fact that that's what employees want. Hopefully employers are listening to it. This might be the topic you and I sort of battled the most.
Well, yeah, just because I got bored of it, not because I disagree with it. I just felt like it is what it is.
Fair.
He's exhausted now. It's been 25 hours and 41 minutes. The third one is leadership transparency over authenticity. So organizations are moving away from authentic communications, which can often feel manufactured, and they're moving toward honest and transparent leadership. Employees want supportiveness and transparency during constant change, not polished corporate speak that obscures real motivations. I love this.
Yeah, I agree with that last part about the polished stuff, getting rid of that and going for the more supportive communication. But I will say, I don't see that necessarily move away from the quote unquote authentic. I think that's always going to be that challenge that communicators and HR leaders are facing, is that here is what we want everybody to believe and know versus the truth. And I think that's where I want truth coming out over transparency and authenticity.
Yeah, great call. The fourth one is AI adoption anxiety. So AI usage has doubled from 21% to 40% of employees, but 41% cite costs as prohibitive, and nearly a third are unsure how to implement it. Trust issues emerge when AI lies or produces inaccurate information, and it's requiring organizations to focus on building trust before pushing skills training. And we touched on AI anxiety in a recent episode as well.
AI.
Now I can hear that. My.
This is going to be that topic that is going to be around for a very long time, because it is not new, and yet it is still new, that being the way that companies are still tackling this challenge. And so what I'm curious to see is, do individuals start making the investment in themselves? And here's the maybe parallel that I'm thinking of is like, does your company pay for your cell phone, or do you do, but the company benefits from it? Like, are people just going to start paying for their own subscriptions to this because they need access to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and employees are going to be using it whether the company wants them to or not?
Yeah, I definitely have spoken to more people, even in the last month, who are using Copilot way more than they were maybe like 3 months ago. So I feel like it's just getting more and more traction in terms of people using it as part of their everyday, which is great. The fifth is the value of internal communication. So organizations with excellent internal communication are 72% more profitable, and moving from good to excellent communication can boost engagement scores by around 40 points. However, over half of practitioners still struggle to demonstrate value through data. This point for me, I think, was linked to that valuing internal comms report that Dr. Kevin Ruck and I produced earlier on this year, and that struggle with demonstrating value, which I don't think is ever going to go away.
It's never going to go away, but I want people to try to solve this problem. And maybe data isn't the solution to demonstrating that value.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key thing to think about is how much data do you really need? The sixth one is change fatigue and recovery time. So employees now take 1 to 2 years to return to normal productivity after organizational change, largely due to compounding layers of change. Leaders must acknowledge this extended timeline rather than expecting quick bounce backs. I love how simple that's. Leaders must acknowledge that this is just going to take a lot longer than they would like.
Yeah, I think this comes down to maybe it's more leaders recognizing the amount of change that employees are going through, knowing that I don't even know that will they ever return to what is normal productivity.
Well,
and
yes.
we talked about that word over and over again. Like, what is normal productivity? Maybe is it expected productivity? Is it the goals that are out there? Like knowing that with the amount of change, that's always going to be a little bit of setback and then return. Is it one step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward? Like you're making progress, but maybe not at the rate that leaders expect. And it's just acknowledging that, I think, simply put.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there is this real issue sometimes with leaders being very task focused, sometimes in terms of their preference rather than people focused. And I think that's where that challenge is that you don't give people that space to come to terms with that change because it can have quite a big impact. The seventh is purpose-driven employment. Employee engagement, 62%, ranks as the top measure of leadership success, above customer satisfaction. Organisations are rethinking recruitment strategies to focus on purpose, growth opportunities, and well-being beyond just the salary.
I hope organizations are rethinking these things. I don't know that all of them are. Maybe the smart ones are. But I'm reading a book now called Tiny Experiments. And a big part of this is talking about how purpose might actually be overrated and overvalued when it comes to your career. So it's cause we think purpose is important. I'm not saying purpose is bad, but are we overrating it? Which is, I'm curious to come back to that in 2026 to see how that drives and changes people's career.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. The eighth one is communication overload versus underload. 74% of UK employees report receiving the right amount of communication, but receiving too little has a more negative impact than too much. Email remains the dominant channel at 65%, though generational preferences vary significantly, with 19% of Gen Z relying on SMS or WhatsApp versus only 5% of boomers.
Yeah, this is where I think a lot of times, especially those that communicators are listening, we tend to rely too much on anecdotal evidence where we say we hear, like people are saying, or we hear that people are getting too much. No, I think they're just getting too much of the stuff that doesn't matter to them. If the stuff that they're getting matters, it's not too much. It might be the same amount. So I think this is where leaders, HR, comms, we need to get better at making sure that we're personalizing and targeting communication. If the relevancy is the key here, it's never too much if it's relevant. I think we tend to react too much to where that underload comes in, where people feel like they're being left out or they don't know what is happening. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's the relevancy that's so important. And I still feel like there's a gap in getting that right with the channels and things that people have to hand. I'm not sure we've got that personalization and stuff right. The ninth one is cultural intelligence in a global workforce. 90% of leadership content focuses on individualistic values, yet 70% of the global workforce has collectivist values. Sarah Black will be delighted this is in here. Organizations must develop cultural intelligence to lead effectively across diverse teams, particularly in remote and hybrid environments.
I think anytime a company can focus more on its culture and actually being honest with evaluating the culture of a company, not every culture is going to have positive aspects of it. So I think truly digging into what's driving behavior, that's the culture of an organization. And it's not always these idealistic values that we put out there, but actually being honest with these assessments, I think is going to be key, especially as you put in these remote and hybrid setups.
And it's that individualistic versus collectivist values that I think is really important. And I think understanding more about cultural intelligence and what that really means in terms of what you care about as an individual will be so important for organizations. So the 10th and final one from the year is the productivity paradox. That nearly took me a while. Leaders struggle to define what productivity means, as you were just saying, certainly for office-based workers, yet we use it to justify return to office mandates. So the real drivers are often real estate costs rather than actual performance metrics. And this is creating some of those trust issues when the honest reasoning just isn't communicated. So it's exactly what you were saying, is what is productivity? How are we defining it? And this is the challenge that I think we have hugely for office-based workers.
I think we it's one of those things, we all know what it is. We all know when we feel productive, but it's hard to define it. It's hard to measure it, and especially in those office-based environments. But I think it's good to reflect back on your own time. Like, where are you spending the time? Is the value you're providing, is that what the business needs? That speaks to a lot of that productivity.
Yeah, I'm reading The Productivity Diet at the moment I think it's by Mike Vardy, and that and Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, which I listened to a couple of years ago. They're two really great books to just try and make sense of productivity for us if we're working in that environment. So I'll pop some links to those in the show notes in case people want to check them out. So that's the end of the 10. Any surprises in there?
No, I don't think so. I think that's probably a pretty good, as you were reading through those 10 and I was reviewing them, like that's a pretty solid summary of those 25 hours and 41 minutes that we talked about, where it felt like there was kind of ebbs and flows in a lot of that. But some of those things, especially like the RTO, AI, middle management, like those things pretty succinctly throughout each episode, we were addressing where there's research, studies, reports, news items, everything that was coming out. That feels like a pretty solid top 10 list.
Yeah. Would you say that they were 10 trends of 2025?
We're not bringing in this. I would say there were trends if you were listening to our episodes, but I would not define them as trends of the industry.
Fair.
So then what we did was, based on those themes, asked AI to look into what are some 5 predictions for 2026 using all the transcripts of we had, plus all the news items that are out there. And these are the top 5 things, Jenni, that it came out with. Number 1, top 5 prediction, the great manager reinvention. With managers overseeing 15 to 20 direct reports and only 27% feeling engaged, 2026 will see organizations forced to choose, either reinvest heavily in manager development and reduce spans of control, or face a cascading management crisis. Companies that survive will implement intensive manager engagement programs focused on coaching rather than control, recognizing that managers account for 70% of team engagement variance. The organizations that don't act will see their engagement scores plummet as the 1 to 2 year change recovery period compounds with ongoing restructuring. What do you think about this prediction?
I mean, I love this prediction and I hope it comes true, but I also feel like I've heard this prediction before in terms of this will be the year where it's about the manager. And I always write about the different trends from different sources over the year and sort of pull that together as a bit of a synopsis. And I think it was McKinsey who about 2 years ago did the whole, it's going to be the year of the manager because if we don't sort this out, it's all going to go wrong. And, now we're just getting rid of them all. So I'm not really sure that that's come true, but I agree. I love the point at the end about the compounding impact of that 1 to 2 year change recovery and the managers not being engaged or not being there, and what that's then going to mean for organizational success. I'm less worried about engagement scores. I'm more thinking about the organizational success.
Yeah, as I've been thinking about this, looking at these as predictions, looking into our crystal ball of sorts, I would view these 5 as like questions to go back to your organization with. Ask your company, hey, what are we doing about?
Yeah.
Don't ask about great manager reinvention. They'll laugh you out of the room. But ask them, like, what are we doing to support managers in 2026? Look at the data behind how many direct reports people have. Do you have any sort of data that shows manager retention, departures, regrettable attrition, any of those things? And actually put a plan together to address this, because you need this. You need these people in an organization. Number 2, hybrid gets honest, finally. The slow creep toward office days will reach a breaking point. Organizations will stop pretending RTO mandates are about quote-unquote culture and collaboration and start being transparent about real estate costs and leadership preferences. This honesty, paradoxically, will improve trust more than any manufactured policy. Smart companies will define specific moments that require in-person presence rather than arbitrary day counts, treating office time as a strategic tool rather than an attendance metric.
And I don't think the honesty is there yet in terms of why we're bringing people back to the office, but I do think there are more people looking at that strategic element of what can we do when people are in the office and what's the reason for them coming back. So I think that will start to shift anyway. And I think communications and HR are going to be absolutely instrumental in that, in terms of making sure that if you're in the office, you're there for a purpose and a reason. But I'm very interested in the broader impact of hybrid. There was a report recently in the UK about London running out of office space because they sold off all the offices to housing and other things. So there's not enough space there. And I still hear of organisations getting people to come back to the office and then going, oh, hang on a minute, we don't know if we've got enough room. And that blows my mind that no one's done that first. So I still think there's a long way to go. But I think these moments that matter when you're in the office will become better, I hope, and more vibrant and more exciting, and bring some of that joy back into work that seems to have gone away.
Yeah, if there's one thread that I would like to hold myself accountable for throughout all these frequency episodes, is we need more from leadership. And that starts with just simply being honest by saying, hey, I'm coming in the office. I want you in the office. As an employee, you may not like that, but at least they're being honest versus hiding behind this culture and collaboration nonsense. Like you said, there might not even be work for people or room for people to work and people working out of conference rooms. Like, just be honest, but also be cognizant of, like we said, that dreaded Thursday where everybody's in. Yeah. So does anything get done at that point in time? Yeah. Number 3, AI trust before AI skills. Organizations will abandon mandatory AI adoption mandates after recognizing that 48% of employees fear job replacement and trust has been broken by AI hallucinations. 2026 will shift toward AI trust building programs that address autonomy, creativity, and transparency concerns before pushing implementation. Companies will learn that you can't mandate transformation without first addressing the very human fears driving resistance.
I love this. And I hope this does happen.
This feels a little too idyllic for me.
Yeah, but I love it. I'm just swimming in it. I know, it's lovely.
But it feels like this is this dream state. And I think, again, smart organizations might take a step back and pause and address some of these. Other ones are just going to keep pushing forward. And I also look at the personal accountability to this of employees raising their hand and saying, hey, I have questions about this. And being able to have that sort of psychological safety to ask those questions in organizations. And
I do think that this, as you were reading it, and I was thinking, this is lovely, but this also has to sort of happen at the same time. Like, you can't spend 6 months of next year doing the programs around trust building and then do implementation. Like, that's not how this is going to work. You have to do them together. And I think that this almost sounds like, do this first and then you can implement. And that's the bit that is never going to be a reality. So how do you implement that change while building trust at the same time? And I think the trust piece is bigger than AI. Like, how do you keep running your organization and be productive and keep going whilst building trust at the same time? That for me should be a thread in there as well.
Number 4. This is going to bother some people, Jenny.
I know.
Oof. Internal comms gets rebranded or absorbed. The conversation about renaming internal communications will intensify as the function evolves beyond channels and messages into employee experience, culture design, and organizational effectiveness. Some organizations will merge comms with HR and people teams, others with strategy or operations. The debate about whether internal comms should exist as a standalone function will become mainstream, with successful models emerging that integrate communications expertise across HR, IT, and leadership development.
I don't really know what to say. Like, when I read this, I was like, oh God, people are going to hate this. So I don't think it will get rebranded I do think it could get absorbed, but I think you have to define absorbed, right? I mean, at the moment, internal comms is very rarely a standalone function on its own. It often sits within HR, within marketing, within any of the available functions. None of them matter. We're not going to get into that debate, but it can sit within there. So is that really a shift when actually it already sits in some of those places? The bigger piece for me is what internal communications is there to do. And I think that's the piece at the beginning about it's evolving beyond channels and messaging into employee experience, culture design, organizational effectiveness. That is that tussle in terms of what is your internal communication function there to do? Is it channels and messaging? Is it the bigger stuff? And I think that is what's going to come to the fore.
I see it where the strong organizations where that internal communications is getting integrated into all of those areas. So it's not, like you said, the standalone thing. It's a big part of what everybody does, and everybody does. And those that are doing internal communications are that giving the guidance, understanding everything that's happening across the organization. No different than someone that's in health and safety would be. They're sort of up top setting guidelines, understanding what's happening, but they're not doing all the health and safety activities across an organization.
Yes.
I see it as being that integration throughout where you're the expert, but not always the one pushing the buttons. And yes, it evolves beyond channels and messages, but there will always be a need for
100%.
Channels and messages.
Yeah. And you're right. That comparison with health and safety, I think is helpful because it's understanding where your remit as a function ends and where sort of normal communication in the organization sort of starts. And I think that's really important. And that's where some of those skills around advisory, strategic, all of those things really come in, because that's the bit that AI can't do, is that kind of advisory consultancy bit.
Yeah. And number 5, purpose becomes performance currency. With 62% of leaders citing employee engagement as their top success metric, above even customer satisfaction, and 72% rethinking recruitment beyond salary, purpose-driven work will become a measurable KPI. Organizations will create purpose scorecards alongside financial metrics, recognizing that in a world of constant change and AI disruption, meaning-making is what retains top talent. Companies that can't articulate genuine purpose beyond profit will continue hemorrhaging their best people to competitors who can.
So this is particularly interesting after your comment earlier about the fact that we're not going to have purpose anymore. So the piece in here for me that I can see playing out, it's got meaning making here. We often talk about sense making, and I think that is the bit that I'm hearing a bit more about in terms of there's all this stuff going on and we're not articulating what that means to the individual and making sense of that to people. Is that a purpose scorecard? I'm not sure, but I feel like that's where it's going to go. And if purpose scorecards come out and this time next year we're talking about what's the best purpose scorecard out there, then I'll eat my hat.
Yeah. This one might be the hardest to believe from a prediction standpoint. And to go back to the book, Tiny Experiments, that I'm talking about, one of the things they talk about, the challenge, purpose is more focused on outcomes, which is what we say, like we should always be aiming toward an outcome. But what the author talks about is you need outputs to get to an outcome. So if you're not focused on outputs, if you're not focused on what you're doing day to day, you're not going to achieve an outcome. So the whole point is scrap purpose, come up with the things you need to do. Keep doing those things to see what the outcome then ends up becoming. But you can't do that without committing to those outputs. So her point is, if you want to be a certain thing, you can't just say, I'm going to be that. You have to decide, what are the things I do to become that? And then do those and decide, is that actually working to what I need to do? So it's an interesting way to kind of break it down and flip purpose and outcome on its head and focus back on outputs of what we're doing in our careers.
But it sounds like what they're saying as well is that you've got to have that future vision and then be doing the things to get there to see whether or not you want to. Or do you just do everything and see what happens and then figure out your purpose after you've been doing stuff?
It's sort of that. It's sort of that, because she talks about the people in a variety of different careers that they feel like they have this purpose. They define it. They're defining their lives by this purpose, but that's not really what they're going to become. And she talks about fashion designers and these, community gardeners and all these different people that thought this was their one purpose, but their purpose is actually this thing over here that they sort of backed into by accident. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I love that. I've got lots of thoughts on that. We'll save that for next year.
So that was sort of like this top 5 predictions, which we'll come back to at the end of next year to see. And looking at the sort of underlying thread throughout those is that 2026 will be the year organizations stop pretending they can control their way through transformation and start building the transparent, trust-based, human-centered cultures their data has been screaming they need all along. Man, I don't know, Jenny. We'll see if that holds true or not.
We should check in like midway through and just see whether we're kind of halfway there on any of these as well.
We should, and then we can hold AI accountable. These are not our predictions. This was AI's determination based on what we talked about in 2025 to what would be 2026. So Jenny, as we wrap up this final episode of 2025, we have ended every episode with a freak out. So what are you freaking out here at the end of 2025?
So I'm having a little freak out this week about my running journey that I've been on this year. So this time last year, I decided that I was going to learn how to run, and I did the Couch to 5K program. So that's like a 9-week, 12-week program, I think, where you learn how to run. And every time I say to someone I've learned how to run, they're like, what do you mean? But I genuinely couldn't run a mile without having to stop. So I had to learn breathing and all that kind of stuff. And I've carried on my running over the course of the year, trying to get my 5K time as close to half an hour as I can. And this morning I was out for a run. I was doing interval runs, so running fast and then not running so fast. And I didn't want to go because I hate that. And as I was running around a corner, there were a couple of dog walkers that I'd obviously passed before, and they were stood having a chat. And as I came round, I said, oh, I'm coming round there. And as I went past, the man said, gosh, you came round here quick, because he'd seen me around the other side. And I had this real moment of, oh, I'm really running. Like, this has become something that I enjoy, and I'm doing it. And I was having a moment of how far I've come from a year ago when I couldn't run for more than probably 2 minutes, not even that. And now I'm running for like 40 minutes. And sometimes at speed. I mean, I did get around the corner and then stop because that was the end of my interval and I was knackered. But it just made me have a little moment of being proud of myself, and I'm rubbish at that. So I'm taking the win.
Well, good for you. I'm proud that you enjoy running. I do not. And when you were talking about like learning how to run again, I was thinking about, I remember like when you think of yourself when you were kids, like you literally ran everywhere. Like you just ran all the time. As adults, we don't. And so I remember like one time, this is several years ago, having to try to make a connection in an airport and take off running and realize like, oh, I haven't run in a long time. Like, it's not like getting on a bike. Like your body kind of doesn't really know how to properly run.
Yeah. To be fair, it's been, and because this year I also injured my shoulder, so I couldn't do CrossFit and stuff. So actually running became a real lifeline for me because I like to be quite active. So it's just sort of stayed with me a lot longer. And even as I'm looking into next year and what I want to do with my fitness and stuff, it's become a big part of my week. And my husband runs, and it's really nice that we've run together on holiday, and we do running together at the weekends. And now I'm enjoying doing that with him because it's just nice. So yeah, that's my little freak out. What's yours?
I have 2. One that I'll get to very quick, and the one's a little bit longer. One is Pantone every year releases like their color of the year. Mm-hmm. And not that they're like overly inspirational, but it's always kind of an interesting thing that for some reason I pay attention to. They could not have picked a more boring color for 2026. It's called Cloud Dancer. It's basically a whitish color. Oh. And I'm like, really? That's what we've got to look forward to, Pantone, in 2026?
Oh, yeah. No, it is like a sort of very light gray, isn't it?
It's anyway, come on, Pantone. Anyway, my other freak out is a little bit of what I've been seeing in the past week on LinkedIn, that maybe Wall Street Journal is regretting this, but they wrote an article about how this frame of like corporate storyteller has appeared in more and more job postings. And now the entire industry is like grabbing on as like validation of like, see, we're important. See, see, look at us. Like we're doing the right things, which there is some truth to that. But let's be mindful of like being a storyteller. Like that's a skill. That's not really an individual job assignment. And so I think that when we look at this, like a corporate storyteller, that could be on the marketing side, that could be on the product side, that could be on the comm side, maybe on the HR side. So everybody, let's pump the brakes a little bit on this. Let's just think about the importance of storytelling and actually spend 2026 finding like, who are those really good storytellers in our company? There are people that we know in our lives who are great storytellers. And there's people that are like, are we ever going to get to the point of the story? So like, let's use this as knowing that storytelling is a really great skill. How can we cultivate that and build on that and find those other great storytellers in the company instead of just using this as like flag in the ground? Hey guys, we did it. Mission accomplished. I don't think it's quite that yet.
Okay, fair. There's been a lot of storyteller stuff this week. So I wondered if it's the evolution of being a good writer and it's just people are choosing. No, hang on, stay with me. I wondered if people were starting to use storyteller rather than writing because they feel like AI could just do the writing. So we need to call it something else to demonstrate that we need that. I agree with you. It's a different thing. Well, that's this was my question: is writing getting a rebrand to storytelling? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just wondering if it is. Well, that's it for this episode and this year. So thank you for joining us this week and for all of those 25 hours and 41 minutes of 2025. Subscribe so that you don't miss another episode and pass this along to someone that you think would enjoy listening or watching. And you can also find Frequency on YouTube. Thank you to Poet Ali for contributing the music to the show, and we'll be back in the new year with more news, insights and opinions about everything comms and leadership in workplaces today. Keep tuning in and turning up.